We're knee-deep into the most intriguing Cardinals offseason in recent memory, and Bloom and Company have been busy reshaping the organization. Plenty of questions for the offseason still remain, and we're answering some of yours on this edition of the Viva Alberto's podcast.
Smith corks one into right down the line. It may go. Go crazy, folks. Go crazy.
Breeze hits it in the air to center. We will see you tomorrow night.
This is the Viva Alberto's podcast on SB Nation.
Welcome into another episode of the Viva Alberto's podcast. As always, I am your host, Jake Wood, and I am joined by writers Scott Plaza and Gabe Simons. We hope you had a wonderful and tryptophantastic Thanksgiving. Today, we are answering fan questions for the November Reader Mailbag. We do a Reader Mailbag episode once a month to make sure we're staying in tune with our readers, covering topics that interest them. We appreciate all the questions we received, and if yours isn't answered make sure you are on the lookout for the next post. Again, we ask for questions once a month, so there's always a chance that your question can make it in next month's iteration. But before we get into that, Gabe, Scott, how you guys doing? Did you have anything eventful, for Thanksgiving?
No. Luckily my family started to get to the point of hey, let's just get in, get out. Let's not make this whole thing an event. So we can eat. We usually eat by 2 o'clock, which means in bed by 7. But then the last couple days I was telling Jake before, we had 11 inches of snow in the last about 16 hours. So spending most of that time out in the driveway and shoveling.
We have my parents host Thanksgiving on both sides of my family on Thursday. And so it's a whole day from 12 to 10.
Jeez, how many people is that?
Oh, God. My dad has 8 brothers and sisters.
Oh, my God.
I'm out.
And all the associated cousins and stuff that comes with that. And
God, it must be a buffet. Do you rent out a banquet center or something for this? Like, how do you fit that many people in one house?
They use the basement and then they use the front. So for one side of the family, they do the normal level, and then they go in the basement for the other side of the family.
Who's the unloved side of the family that is in the basement?
No, the basement's nice. It's got a bar and everything.
Okay. Yeah, it's like, we don't want to deal with you. Go to the basement. Like,
no.
I got to try collard greens for the first time, and that was pretty cool. 2 thumbs up for my approval. They were delicious. Thank you, Cousin Wendy, for making them, and Cousin Kai as well. Thank you so much. They were absolutely fantastic. Before we get into the readers' questions, the Cardinals struck their first major deal of the offseason last week, trading Sonny Gray and $20 million to the Boston Red Sox for right-handed pitcher Richard Fitts and left-handed pitching prospect Brandon Clark. What were your guys' impressions of the deal? Gabe, I'll let you go first, and then Scott, I'll let you follow.
Pretty much as good as I would have hoped for Sonny Gray trade. In fact, more than I was thinking it was going to be, because I did not expect Bill DeWitt to greenlight $20 million going over, which is how they were able to get Brandon Clark in addition to Richard Fitts, I think. But yeah, they got an essentially major league ready pitcher who might end up starting the year in AAA. It's not clear yet, but who will definitely throw like 50 to 100 innings at least, I assume. And they got a higher upside guy who kind of fits into the same kind of prospect as like a Tink Hence or Jacob Roby, where there's some serious injury concerns, but serious strikeout stuff. So I don't think you're going to get a higher upside prospect who is more of a sure thing. So, yeah, I'm just happy you got both ends of the thing, some certainty and then some upside.
Yeah, I pretty much echo Gabe's sentiment. I thought it would be maybe you get Richard Fitts in exchange. So maybe that $20 million did help to get that Brandon Clark. But yeah, I agree. I thought that was probably the top end of any return that you're going to get. And the fact that they got it done so early is great. And then I just wanted to talk about like the Brandon Clark, like sure thing type of deal. I think it was Kyle Reese was on another, I think it was Dealing the Cards or Cardinals Prospects the other day, talking about how it was like
Birds on the Farm.
Birds on the Farm, thank you. How it was talking about reliever risk and how that's rather reliever fallback.
Correct.
In Clark, and I agree with that. And that's something that I've been kind of saying as well. It's like, well, why not be happy about the sure thing, quote unquote, of being a big league reliever while still having the potential of being a big league starter? So why does it always have to be a risk? Why can't it just be that solid floor?
I agree, and I agree with you, like Kyle, in your sentiment as well. Is like I think now that the type of pitcher that the Cardinals are targeting, it's not so much a reliever risk because the type of stuff that they have will play out of the bullpen. So it's more like you need to reshape recalibrate your mind, and it's more like reliever fallback. So like you're still going to get something out of them, even if they don't end up being starting pitchers, they can still be weapons out of the bullpen. Whereas in the past, the Cardinals were drafting these high floor guys that really didn't have all that exciting, enticing stuff. And so if they didn't stick as a starter, they essentially had no value moving forward out of the bullpen. Not to pick on anyone in particular, but like you think about like a Max Radjic, right? And he's decent enough, and if he can recapture something that he had in Double A a couple seasons ago and kind of put himself back on the map as kind of a starting pitcher, then like you have something there. But in terms of like being able to become a reliever, he just doesn't have the kind of stuff that profiles for that. And so I don't think that he necessarily has that same type of like fallback to him. Whereas like with a Brandon Clark, that his stuff would play monstrously out of the bullpen. I can almost see him like, now, this is a high platitude to give him, but I could almost see Brandon Clark from day one being like an Andrew Miller type, like big fastball, ridiculous slider. And if he just had those two pitches working out of the bullpen, the dude would be an absolute monster. But the fact that he has two other usable pitches in his arsenal, there's no reason that at high A he shouldn't continue to try to build up to be a starter, because we all know that a starting pitcher has, infinitely more value than just a back end reliever type. Did you guys think that you think that Heim did well on this deal? What was the most interesting part of the trade for you? Was it the fact that Cardinals ownership greenlighted the $20 million to go to Boston, or was it the type of arms they got? What did you guys find most fascinating? I'll start with you on this one, Scott.
I love the idea of Fitz. I actually talked about how he was seen as a potential fit last offseason for the Cardinals, but that would have been in a Nolan Arenado deal. So it's just interesting to see that kind of come around. And then with the upside of Clark, I think that's very intriguing as far as the return goes. So I think that we get too caught up in the money sometimes. That money was already allocated, so what does it matter where it's going at this point? That $40 million is getting paid regardless. But now it's only $20 million as opposed to that full 40. So I think with that, I really don't understand well, it depends on what the finances were before I finally return that grade for the report card. I've seen that. But I don't see that as being such a big deal.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, the more shocking thing is just that it was greenlit more than, because it's just smart to throw in 20 million, because I don't really care how much, Bill DeWitt has to pay for a prospect. Um, but I think the interesting thing is I really didn't expect Sonny Gray to return an MLB ready starting rotation option. Honestly, that's
Hmm.
we got quite a few pitchers somewhat similar to Brendan Clark at the deadline, so that's clearly the kind of pitcher we're targeting. So I would say that one isn't really as much of a surprise. But to get both him and the guy who, in theory, on opening day might be in the rotation, he probably won't be the opening day starter, but he will be capable of starting on day one. And that's really exciting because our depth for this upcoming year specifically was kind of weak because a lot of the guys who were supposed to slot in got hurt and will be hurt for at least half the year, like Chirpy and Roby. So yeah, I'm just excited we got somebody to like look to the future with like immediately.
With those questions answered, the only other question remaining really on this topic is who's next?
Donnie.
Yeah, I feel like Arenado's uh, too complicated to not be like last minute almost. I don't know because teams
I,
want to have their third base situations like I think they would want everything exhausted before they go to Nolan Arenado. That's just my guess. And maybe they have
I'm
more
not.
than we think, but
My bad, Gabe.
no,
I
you're
want
good.
to say that I'm not too like. reading too much into Heim Bloom's like we're not going to trade Donovan unless we're going to be blown away. I don't think any team is going to blow away the Cardinals beyond what his value is. I don't really think he's somebody that you overpay for. So I think the Cardinals know his value and the other teams know his value, and they're just going to end up just agreeing to it. And maybe that does net them a little bit something more, his comment saying that, but I think Donovan's still pretty much more than 80% out the door.
Although I will say, I am very surprised what Taylor Ward got back. Although
Yes.
maybe Grayson Rodriguez is just a lot more broke than like maybe there's something there where it's like if he pitches I don't know 50 innings, it'll be a shock. But that got kind of got my expectations up a little bit more, to be honest, what Taylor Ward returned. So we'll
Well,
see.
the Angels also didn't do a physical, so they probably don't even know how healthy he is.
Now
Apparently that's normal.
Oh,
let's
really?
let's
Yeah,
Well,
talk
maybe
about.
not for someone like Rodriguez, though.
Oh yeah. I mean, I heard that they just share medical info and that it's normal to have a physical for free agent signings, but not necessarily for trades.
Hmm.
Right. So Jim Bowden, who I know some people are like, take a grain of salt with whatever he says, but he talked about like acquiring GMs can make deals contingent upon players passing physicals. Now that isn't a requirement whenever you're trying to sign a deal. A GM is free to operate however he feels. And apparently in this case, Perry Manazian, who is the general manager for the Angels, felt that he didn't need to, I guess, and he felt comfortable with the medical report that they were getting from the Orioles that he decided to forego the physical aspect of the deal. But no, he can't. Like acquiring GMs can request a deal be contingent upon passing a physical. It just so happens that in this case they didn't decide to do that for whatever reason. Maybe the Angels were afraid that their medical staff would fail him. I don't know. It's just kind of speculation at this point. But going back to Brendan Donovan for just a second, you said that you're not sure that he will return very much like surplus value. I'm not sitting here saying that like he has let me think, like Juan Soto type level value. But you talk about Donovan, who was a 3-win player last year. He was an all-star, he was a 119 WRC plus hitter. He has 2 years of team control left. There are a lot of aspects. He's got positional versatility and flexibility. He can fit on just about every roster in the league. I see him as a very valuable commodity, and I think that the Cardinals should hold a high price tag for that type of talent. And so like I'm not saying that he's going to get the moon, but he still should get you something pretty decent.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think he's going to be not a negligible return. I just think that there's enough alternatives depending on what position the acquiring team would want them. Like if they want him at second base, they could go somewhere else if the price is too high or something like that. And I just think that um the fact that the amount of teams are interested, like, they can fit on every team. And if you go on Cardinals Twitter, it's like, well, that means we're obviously getting two top 100 prospects and one of them being a top 50.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm talking about as far as the expectations. I think that's crazy. I think maybe one top 100 prospect and a couple, maybe little more lottery tickets is something I'd accept. But two top 100s, I think we need to temper the expectations.
I
I'll
think
agree with that.
I think you can get one top 100 guy, one other guy that's kind of in their top 10 of their system, and then another lottery ticket. I think is in the realm of fair, and so that's kind of where my expectation is. And if that top 100, if it's not a top 100 player, it's a player that can contribute at the major league level that has 4 or 5 at least minimum years of control remaining. So, not an outrageous price tag, but definitely something that should return the Cardinals something that will better position them going forward.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll turn it over to the readers' questions now, and the first question comes to us from Memphis Mike, and Memphis Mike is obviously in Memphis, so this question is geared towards a Memphis player. Will Matt Koperniak be given a chance to make the Cardinals' 26-man team this season, or will he be cut loose? Gabe, I will throw that first question over to you to start.
Well, I've been assuming for months that he was going to get DFA'd, and I consider it him exceeding expectations by still being on the 40-man roster. He is overshot where I would expect him to be. Having said that, I would be kind of surprised. I'll maintain if he's on the 40-man roster on opening day, which means he wouldn't be on the 26-man roster. He just, I don't know. It would be tough unless uh, they didn't really make any outfield moves and they put Walker in AAA. But I don't know. I would be surprised if he's a part of the major league plan on opening day personally, because he had like a below average hitting season in AAA last year, and he's like 29 or 28 or something. I don't know. I'm not seeing it, but I have, like I said, he's already exceeded where I thought he'd be at this point. So you never know.
Yeah, I thought his chance was going to be at the start of last season with how he finished the year before and then having a great spring training. And then when he didn't take off at AAA or maintain his success at AAA, I think it was back to the Siani train or the Fermin or whoever else was coming up. And then they also have Nathan Church, who they decided to call upon before him. So I think if they're going to go with anybody, it's going to be Church over Koperniak. So if they can hang on to him, I'm sure they'll try figure out whatever the best way to do that is. But then I don't see him as being that first option to make that 26.
Yeah, I don't think it hurts anything to start him in AAA next season and just kind of let him try to reestablish himself what he was in 2024. Obviously, that didn't carry over into 2025. Got off to a really, really rough start this year. And then, as middle to late season, he kind of picked it back up again. I don't know whether there was an injury there or what exactly happened for him, but he certainly was not himself or what he had showed, previously last season. I wonder if maybe he came into the season a little worn down from just all of the baseball that he played winter ball last season for Albert Pujols in the Dominican. I kind of wonder what exactly led to that, because it was very unusual for him and his production that he kind of put out last season. So I don't see any harm in him starting the season in AAA, but I don't think that he has any type of consideration for the 26-man roster, at least not at the outset of the season. He could always play himself into that position later, mid to late season, but it seems as though that Matt Koperniak is kind of in a situation where he's got to reprove his value to the organization. And it's very much, we know that baseball is a what have you done for me lately sport, and unfortunately Koperniak didn't show enough last season to kind of be in that type of consideration. Let's move on to our next question. This comes to us from the real Aaron, not the fake Aaron, the real Aaron. He has an interesting perspective on something that he wants us to kind of share or give our perspective on, because we're a little more plugged in than he is. His question is about John Mozeliak and his era and what we can expect from Chaim Bloom, and just kind of breaking this down a little bit. He said, Mo, especially as president of baseball operations, had a lot of responsibilities that weren't directly related to the on-field product, like minor league stadium deals and ballpark village projects. You can't blame Mo for wanting to spread his wings a bit and try some new things, but it would necessarily have reduced the amount of time he had to focus on player scouting, development, and acquisition. Gersh was being groomed as his successor, but in retrospect, that clearly didn't work out based on the fact that the team brought Bloom in and moved Gersh to special projects. It's not a knock on Gersh personally. It's hard to say whether that's him not being up to the challenge or Mo's big personality, he speculates, and to pull with ownership and pull with ownership not putting him in position to succeed. Would you say that that's an accurate summary of the situation of the past 8 or so years? Gabe, I'll let you start, and then Scott, you follow.
That's a tough question, because I wish I knew more about the ins and outs of what Mosaic was doing. I've never heard Mo called a big personality though.
That was the part that gave me pause too. It was very interesting.
No, I don't know if I think he meant it in a different way than like,
I agree,
like a personality and
I know what he meant. Yeah.
But right. I would say I feel like that might just be kind of a typical Pobo job nowadays. I don't know that he was necessarily asked to do more than typical president of baseball operations? I could be wrong, because otherwise, why would they? I mean, why would they create a different position than general manager if you didn't have more responsibilities? Um, Maybe others had more involved GMs than Mozeliak, but we don't know how involved Gersh was either. I've heard him credited for certain deadline deals, so maybe he was more involved than we know. He just was never in front of the media. So I just feel like I do not know enough information to really answer this question, just because I'm not in the room, and we can only really speculate on how involved or not involved Gersh was and how much Mo had on his plate in comparison to other Pobos. But I suspect it's roughly similar to what others were tasked with, I suppose.
Scott, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I think the baseball operations portion of it is important. Like you said, Gabe, is that he wasn't just the GM, he was baseball operations. So there's more than just that player scouting stuff. And we have to remember it's more than just the GM tenure. He's been there for what, 30 years or close to. So he's been involved with a lot of it. I'm sure coming from the ballpark village, then the development, the new stadium, like he's been around for all of it. So I'm sure that's why he seems like he's been more involved. And Gabe, like you said as well, like we can only speculate to see how much actually happened behind the scenes with Gersh, but I would say that since they brought Bloom in, maybe Gersh's special projects weren't coming up with the results or just weren't putting them towards the future where now they obviously need to turn to. So like you said, without knowing the insides of it, we just kind of have to think that that part of Mo's job was to be more involved, and Bloom is here for the transition.
So I will take it in a couple different directions, and this is just based off of what I have gathered and read, heard, what have you. Obviously, I don't have firsthand information in the building, but as far as Mo being involved in like side projects or things like that, I believe that's at the or the urging of Bill DeWitt for him to be involved in those types of projects. Maybe he was he being spread too thin? Not necessarily. If you player scouting, you have pro scouts, you have amateur scouts, you have a whole scouting department. That is their literal responsibility to scout players and then report back to Mo what their opinions are on players. Development and acquisition. Development, that was supposed to be Gary LaRocque's responsibility. Acquisition does fall under John Mozeliak and Michael Gersh. However, there was a lot of things in terms of like the internal model that Gersh had developed and helped get him elevated into the general manager role. That there has been a lot of questions about the Cardinals and their ability to evaluate internal talent, and I do know that a lot of the skepticism of that was kind of more or less look towards Gersh's model in that regard. Bloom was kind of an outside, so I don't think that Gersh's misfortunes, I guess is the best way I can put it, shortcomings, I don't think is really fair to him. But Bloom came in after 2023 happened, and that all kind of disastrously fell apart on the Cardinals. And I think finally my speculation is that they kind of woke up and realized they need an outside voice and some outside perspective. And by the way, Boston just fired this really bright young guy where he probably got a really raw deal in. Hey, let's bring him in, do some internal auditing of where the organization is. And then from there, they were like, man, we really like what Bloom has to say. And, Mo, you've been talking about wanting to kind of step away for a while. Why don't we put, a transition, a transition plan in place so that Heim can take over whenever he's ready to do so. And that's kind of how that came about. I don't think it was necessarily Gersh fell out of favor and then they just brought Bloom in to take him, out of that role. I think it was just, hey, here's an opportunity for Bloom to come in, and things aren't really standing up to where they use standards they used to stand up to, and so now Bloom is here and he's going to take us in a new direction. Is just kind of how it came to be. The challenge or Mo's big personality. Look, Mo's a pretty. I know how he outwardly comes out towards other people, but the way that he was like with us and like the way that he, I don't know, spoke to us, it wasn't so much that he was, smarter than everybody else in the room or that, like he was better than everybody else. Like, I don't agree with that sentiment that I hear from a lot of fans. It was more so, whenever he talked to us, he was very, jovial and very, personable and very kind and very open. And so I don't know if maybe it's just like this outward face he puts out whenever he's, in front of a large crowd as the Pobo, right? I just think, I don't know, there's Mo, the guy behind somewhat closed doors or in smaller, circles. And then there's Mo, like the face of the franchise talking to, all of Cardinal Nation in the world. I don't know that I would necessarily agree with that as an accurate summary of the situation over the past 8 years or so. I think that a little bit is colored by just kind of, traditional fan impressions. It's definitely different than like for us as writers and those of us who have gotten to cover the team up close. It's a little bit of a different perspective than kind of what we've seen, but I still think that, let me put a bow on it this way. I think that the Cardinals are just in a better position going forward to evaluate internal talent because of the increased investment in infrastructure and all of these new guys like a Rob Serfolio, like a Matt Pierpont, like we saw with a Jacob Buffa and a Joe Douglas, like all of these key decision makers who are coming in, who are really good. I also forgot to mention Larry Day, who's now heading, the farm system, the farm director. Like there are so many good, smart, very development-centered people that I just encourage Cardinals fans to give this process a chance because it's going to be so much more fruitful than what you had experienced the previous 10 seasons or so. On to our next question from co-writer Greg Armstead at or STL Cards fans. Have Bloom and DeWitt discussed budget yet? I'll save you guys the hassle on this question. I'll just answer this really quickly. December 2nd, I know, is whenever the final numbers for the previous season's revenue are supposed to be finalized. And so I do know that the Cardinals should have a clear idea of where the payroll is going to stand. We've already heard public comments from Chaim Bloom that his expectation is that the payroll should be similar to what it was the previous season. So that puts the Cardinals right in the $140 million range for their team payroll. So that's kind of where that should stand. So operate based off of that understanding.
You took that question a lot more seriously than it was asked.
Probably so, but I know there are still fans out there who are legitimately still curious. Like, what's the number we're looking at? We don't really have a good idea. Like, that's just taking a funny question and making it a little more informative. There we go. That's the word. I'm good at words. All right. Next question from THP0344, a frequenter on this. On this, what are we doing? We're doing a reader mailbag. I'm starting to lose my train of thought, guys. Bear with me. Who are you most excited about to see develop in 2026? He says, let's take out the caveats of JJ Weatherholt and Liam Doyle. Who is the guy who has room to grow you are excited to see move in the right direction? Scott, I've been talking a long time. You talk, please.
I'm gonna say that I'm gonna take this from the minor league level at this point right now. And I'm gonna say I'm excited mostly for Leonardo Bernal to see what he's able to do at the next level. I'm assuming that he's going to be bumping up to AAA. And I was going to originally go with Ivan Herrera in the catching, but Jake, I know that you are way out on his catching here. So I want to see if Leo Bernal is going to end up being that future behind the plate and provide that pop, as well as he won that minor league Gold Glove this year. So I think he would be an awesome story to just kind of follow along this year and get us something to be excited about assuming that JJ Weatherholt is doing his thing in the major leagues, maybe that we can get excited as we were about JJ this year as we can about Bernal for next year.
Scott, I'll address your slander in just a second. Gabe, go ahead with your option.
Well, I wasn't sure whether to go minor league or major league, so I picked one of each. I think for the major leagues, I'm kind of excited to see Matthew Liberatore follow up his, I guess, somewhat surprising, not debut season, but debut as a full-time rotation member. And I'm really hoping that the second half was just him getting a little bit worn down, and that we could see more of his first half for the whole year. I'm at least excited to get like now we know what Liberatore is more once this year is playing than I think we have necessarily in the past. And then I'm excited to see Baez follow up his year last year. Hopefully he can Joshua Baez. I guess I got to specify that now. Um,
You could
I'm,
be
I'm
excited about Jesus Baez too.
I could. I'm not yet, but I could. But yeah, no, I'm because he's gonna be AAA. So I mean, we might see him in the major leagues. He's on the 40-man roster. And last year at this time, he was like, "Are we gonna release him soon?" Like, I don't know if it was that extreme, but like he was such a non-prospect. It's crazy that he could be in the major leagues in like June. And I'm excited to see how for real his numbers were last year. See if his strikeout issues just vanished out of nowhere. That would be great. I would love that. And yeah, hopefully see him in the major leagues. Yeah, he would be my answer over Liberatore if I had to pick one.
Yeah. So for me, I'm really excited about the young arms that have just been brought into the system and see how they develop. I'm talking about like a Tanner Franklin. I'm talking about like an aforementioned Brandon Clark. I'm really excited to see guys who have been dealing with injuries get hopefully their first opportunities to kind of show what they can do. And like an Andrew Dukanich or a Peyton Graham, who we talked to a couple months ago. I'm really excited to see. Or did I mention Tanner Franklin? I think he was the first name I mentioned. I'm really excited to see these young power arms come through the system and really like flash what they can do, because I do think that there are arms beyond the 3 or 4 that we continually talk about with like Liam Doyle and Quinn Matthews and Bryson Motts and like those guys, Eshawn Henderson. Like these guys are good, but like if all of these guys take that step forward, holy crap, the Cardinals have a pitching pipeline again. And, it's going to be really exciting over the next couple of years, to see them develop and potentially graduate and become something in the next couple of years. So like, I'm just excited about seeing those guys and what they're able to produce. Now, on to Scott for a second, saying that I am fully vehemently opposed to Ivan Herrera being a catcher is not accurate. My perspective is that the bat is the carrying tool. And I think the important thing to do for the player and the profile is to protect the carrying tool at all costs. Now, if you want to put him back behind the plate as a catcher, I fully understand that gives him enormous value going forward if that is able to take hold. But if there is one more injury that detracts from that player and that bat being on the field, I do not see how that is beneficial to the Cardinals going forward. If you are putting or if you are, decreasing the value that is a known quantity for potential value that could be, there 2, 3, 4 years down the line, that doesn't really matter in the here and now, because as there are 5 catchers is there 4 or 5 catchers on the 40-man roster at this current juncture? There is not a pressing need for him to be a catcher and for him to be an impact player on this team and moving forward.
I agree with that. I want to say that I am in on the Herrera catching explanation or like experiment. And I believe it was one of my pieces a week or 2 ago on the website where I said, I have silver slugger expectations for Herrera.
Oh, very first. Yeah.
Because I think his bat will play as a catcher. And the Silver Slugger is about hitting, not catching. So, and I actually got kind of lit up, I think, in the comments, kind of talking about how saying that his offense should be more valuable than his defense, or how important it was to have a defensive valuable catcher behind the plate. Like as a pitcher, I get it, but I also think that that's going to be overvalued, especially for a team that was so anemic offensively that I just need somebody to be able to hit. And if you can get that out of the catching position and have a DH who's going to be productive, I think that provides way more value.
And I would also say that for this coming year, actually catching is a need unless you are a big believer in Crooks being ready right now, which Pozo being more than a backup catcher, because I think we're in this awkward stage where none of the prospects are quite ready. So it makes all the sense in the world to have Herrera catch for at least the first half of the season, and then if it doesn't work out, then we can move on to Crooks, maybe Bernal, but probably not yet. So yeah, I would argue actually that catching would be is in this position where Herrera, it makes a lot of sense for her to catch.
I think, and I'm not a Jimmy Crooks hater by any stretch of the imagination. I think Jimmy Crooks is trade bait this offseason.
Possible, yeah.
And let me explain just a little bit further on that. So Ivan Herrera as the experiment behind the plate as a catcher. I fully understand why the organization is doing it. It makes sense to me. Try it again. If maybe you can catch lightning in a bottle and you have your catcher going forward. On the off chance that it doesn't work out and Herrera has to be more of a DH, maybe he starts to get some reps at first base. Maybe they try a left field thing again. I don't know. I don't know where they put him. It's neither here nor there. But my point being, let's take our personal opinions aside and think from the perspective of what the Cardinals would do. Would the Cardinals, with an already glut of left-handed hitting options, put another left-handed hitting option behind the plate? Or would they view 6 years of, a quote-unquote top prospect catcher as something that they could get for another potential need on the roster? Or maybe I don't know. I know people would hate this, but maybe they attach him to a Nolan Arenado to maybe save having to eat some money, or maybe they could, use it to enhance the return. I don't know. However they want to use it in a creative way, it's fine. But I see Jimmy Crooks as kind of caught in between. I don't think he's going to go back to AAA, and you can't devote enough time to develop two catchers at AAA. You know what? Fans are going to say they disagree with that sentiment and eat both half the time, but I think that's investing half of the development to both, and neither one gets the full opportunity. And I think that Leo Bernal is the better player with the higher ceiling, with the more projectable future than Jimmy Crooks. Jimmy Crooks is a great defensive catcher, but I'm not really sure where the offense is if it's ever gonna take the step forward that's necessary. Now, going back to the major league level, if Herrera fails, they're going to want to go back to their safety blanket and Pedro Pages. The pitching staff knows him. The pitching staff trusts him. The Cardinals know him. The Cardinals trust him. And whether or not you enjoy watching him hit in the Cardinals' mind is beside the point, because as a catcher, he is safe, he is reliable behind the plate, and they can trust him with a developing pitching staff, and that would be their fallback option going forward. I know that
they will call up Crooks if
I don't think that
really?
I don't think that he earned, or he showed enough to earn that trust. I think that they would rather use 6 years of Crooks as potential trade acquisition bait than they would for 4 years of Pages, where the value is much more limited in what the return could be. I still think that there are teams across the league that would dream on more of what a Jimmy Crooks could be, if that makes sense.
I wouldn't be surprised if he's traded this offseason. I will say if he does make it to opening day, I would be shocked if he's not the guy who at least starts half the games with Paz or something like that. I'd be shocked if they just don't call him up. I'm going to be honest, especially if he lasts into next year. It would not surprise me if he's traded. I cannot emphasize that enough.
I don't see a world in which both Pages and Crooks are in the organization come April 1st of this coming year.
Really?
I don't
see
it.
The only way I think that's possible is if Herrera's DHing and then Crooks and Pages are splitting that catching, and then it's
that's
Herrera
possible. But they could also just bring Pozo back up and make him the backup and kind of go forward where they were last season.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. Maybe they might have Pozo up anyway as like the guy, so you could pinch hit for.
Yeah, the right-handed bat. Yeah, you never know. I mean, it does make it a little bit tougher because of it's great to have the DH, but it also is kind of tough because you only have 4 bench spots, so you have to be a little bit more flexible with the positions that you have on the bench. Yada yada yada. moving on to, unless you guys have anything else on that topic, real quick.
Well, couldn't Pozo DH and then Pajes be the backup for Herrera?
I don't think
But
Pozo's good enough to be your everyday DH,
oh,
but
I
that
1000% agree. But yeah, that's just to get that for the people
sure,
that would be thinking that.
Well,
sure.
if Herrera, yeah, I mean, I'm not disputing that. I was gonna say if Herrera, you want him in his bat in the lineup literally every day,
Mhm.
so he almost has to like catch every other day, right?
I was
Because if
thinking
you use him
like,
like a normal catcher, he would have to sit too much. I don't think you would like start him 2 to 3 games and then DH and then because I don't feel like that. You want more rest, or am I crazy? How does William Contreras used? Maybe he's the
well,
I think
so
catching is going to be a big question for a few years.
so like I was thinking about this the other day, and I'm like, how do I think Ollie Marmol would handle this situation? Like, how if I were Ollie, how would I handle this situation? It's like maybe I would go with like a 3-2-1 breakdown, right? Like I'd give 3 days to Herrera, 2 days to Pajes, maybe 1 day to Pozo. Maybe if I were to do it that way, and so that way Herrera's catching half the time, he's DHing the other half of the time, because as we know, the Cardinals or Major League Baseball no longer has a catcher that catches 140, 150 games a season. That type of catcher just doesn't exist anymore outside of maybe like a JT Real Muto or a Patrick Bailey, like those kinds of guys. But like, it's very, very rare that is the case anymore. And so like, if Herrera caught 50%, if Pajes caught 40%, and then you had Pozo catch 10% of games and kind of broke it down a little bit that way it's spread around, and you get a decently balanced amount of playing time that way that also doesn't put too much on Herrera trying to develop into that catcher, I think would make a fair amount of sense.
yeah.
Okay. Next question comes to us from Huey RVA. Am I the only one on the board in a panic about the Cardinals outfield present and future? What is your opinion on the state of the outfield? 6 of the 7, he puts in quotations. Is that how the kids do it? Very funny, Huey. I like that. Of the Cards' top prospects are left-handed pitchers or catchers, according to MLB Pipeline. The first outfielder, Josh Baez, shows up at number 12. Now, and Nathan Church is at 15. I will caution you, Huey, that wait for that list to be updated, because that is the end of season list that you're looking at, not what is going into next season. There are some outlets that I'm starting to see put Baez into the top 10, top 5 of the Cardinals farm system. So like, just wait, because I think that Baez is going to get a healthy push up those rankings, and I think that a lot of people around baseball are very intrigued by what he is going to be, or what he's going to bring to the table next season at starting in AAA. Along with Connor Griffin, he was the only other player in minor league baseball to hit at least 20 home runs and steal at least 50 bases. And so there is a lot of exciting tools in that the kid's a tool shed. He can do so many different things, and he's very exciting. And the fact that he took the steps forward last season that he did, Cardinals fans should be very excited about the impending arrival of a Josh Baez. Anyway, and we back to Huey RVA, and we expect these guys to be the top quality you need in the outfield. He questions, they may be solid MLB players, but it is doubtful they both achieve that status. Scott is fourth outfielder material in his opinion. Walker is a question mark. Also, what path would you take to improve the dire situation? How many more years will the Cardinals field a bottom 5 outfield? And Gabe, I know you are chomping at the bit to get to this opportunity, so you go ahead and start us off.
If I was concerned, or let me rephrase that. If my number one concern for this upcoming season was winning the division, I would be probably in a state of panic. But because they're in the position they're in, we got enough players to where you're like, well, we got to see what they got. You got Jordan Walker to some extent, although there's some disagreement on how much he should play in this upcoming season. We still got Lars Nootbaar, who we might be able to trade for something in the future. And then like I said, I'm really excited for Baez, but like, I mean, my main level of non-panic just mostly has to do with the fact that 2026 is not supposed to be the year that we're going to be winning. And usually when you're in that kind of position, one of the spots on your team is going to be severely lacking that needs to be upgraded. And just in general, I feel like outfield is not quite as hard to upgrade as like getting a number 2 starter or something. So when they are ready to push the chips in, I feel like it'd be easier to upgrade than maybe some other spots. I mean, my reaction would be if I was given unlimited budget would be to sign Kyle Tucker, and then you wouldn't have to worry about it. But obviously, that's not going to happen. Yeah, no, I just think my lack of panic, if you want to call it that, is not necessarily more faith in the outfielders we do have. Although I'm a little higher on Victor Scott, I think, than a lot of people call him a fourth outfielder. But we'll see if his bat can take a little bit of a step forward. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's just like I said, it just has to do with the fact that for 2026 specifically, I don't really expect to like make the playoffs or win the division. So like the fact that the outfield is kind of lacking doesn't put me in a panic because that's going to happen to one of the positions. Otherwise, if you were not in a panic about one of them, you probably would have some hopes for the season as far as winning is concerned.
Yeah, Huey, first thing, 6 or 7. I am a high school teacher, so I'm going to confirm that your aura is off the charts with that usage. So good for you. I still don't know what it means, but good on you. I'll touch on Gabe's last point first, is that he's high on Victor Scott. I'm out. Not out, but I think
Whoa!
one of my very first articles for this website was how Victor Scott was holding back the offense, and this is at the point when we were getting teased that they could still be in part of the competition for the division. And I was getting destroyed with that one because his defense is oh so good.
But it's fun to destroy you, Scott. I don't know what do you expect?
Are you higher on Nathan Church?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm not high on really much of the center field stuff that's going on right now, which is where I think that, if Victor Scott was 75% of the outfielder he was and take that extra 25% and put it into the hitter, I'd much rather have that than his bunting with 2 strikes and that approach. And I know I said during the trade deadline that I'm like, hey, Victor Scott for Luis Robert. I brought that up on the website last week too in the comments. And at that time, I think I got like 80,000 engagements, and 90% of them were how ridiculously idiotic I am.
He's just rage baiting.
No, and I would still make that trade 100% of the time. But that's where I am in the outfield right now. Again, if they were competing, which they aren't. So to Gabe's point of being able to overhaul the outfield, I think you're able to do that a little bit easier than other premier positions.
Yeah, I'm pretty well in lockstep with you guys. I'm not overly concerned about the state of the outfield, where it's at, where it's going. I feel really good about like I mentioned before, Josh Baez. I think there's something interesting there. Look, the realistic perspective is the quickest way the Cardinals are able to get back to being relevant is if Jordan Walker ever becomes what he's supposed to become, right? You have an instant star in the making right there if he ever attains the ceiling that was put on him in the first place. If he takes that step forward this season, you're in a much better position than you were coming into the season, or coming out of the season than you were coming into the season. For Victor Scott, the focus this offseason is supposed to be on the offensive side of the ball. And so TBD on Victor Scott and what he is. Very interesting to hear Scott out on him, but
that's what I had to say. I say not out, but as of where I was last time, I don't think there's as much.
You're
of a
down
floor
on
as I
him. You're not
expected.
out on him.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was excited about him after spring training and thought he'd be, a 250, 260 guy with, 10 homers maybe. And we didn't even see it.
And
really
then you
in glimpses of
realize that spring training isn't real and none of that really matters.
Of course, I'm talking eye test, Mr.
Right,
Wood.
right. Yeah. AAA pitchers throwing fastballs right down the middle. That's totally how it happens in the season. Anyway, just give it time to develop, man. Where it stands right now, yeah, Victor Scott looked a lot like a fourth outfielder starting every single day. Does that mean, is that going to be where he ends up? No, that guy is incredibly driven. It's every time, the couple times that I've gotten the chance to talk to him, that guy is really driven and really intense and really focused and intent on becoming the best version of himself that he possibly can, to keep and win this job that he has in center field. So, I put nothing past him and his ability to take steps forward. As a matter of fact, if he ever happens to listen to this podcast, I know he does listen to Cardinals podcasts, that if he hears what Scott had to say, it's only going to drive him further, towards that ultimate goal of becoming a legitimate center fielder in Major League Baseball on both the offensive and defensive side of the ball. But
I love being wrong, so fine with me. I'm wrong every day with my wife and my high school kids anyway.
Amen to that. Anyway, but back to the question, what path would you take to improve the dire situation? First of all, I disagree with it being in a dire situation. I think that it is less than ideal, but I wouldn't call it like dire. I think that the Cardinals are just in a situation where they have other needs that they are focused on first. I don't think that they view the outfield as like a panicked situation, but it is, we could maybe use one or two more that have a little more upside, in the the medium term future. How many more years will the Cardinals field a bottom 5 outfield? Well, that's wholly dependent on the players that are currently there. Can if Lars Nootbaar is on the opening day roster, is he able to stay healthy, and can he produce at a 10 to 15% above league average rate like most of us pretty well expect him to be? Can Victor Scott take that important step forward offensively and propel him over that 100 WRC plus threshold? Can Jordan Walker, take himself to the next level and stabilize himself at the major league level and really start to take these important steps forward that we all have the impression that we believe that he could, but he hasn't shown it yet. And maybe we're all starting to get kind of really tired of it. It's like make or break time for him. So, how many more years will it be? I don't know. It depends on the players showing up and taking advantage of the opportunities that's in front of them. I know that's kind of a cop-out answer, but it really is just like the best way to look at it is like, they'll be good whether or not whether they decide they want to or they can take the steps forward, or if they bring in new guys to take that over. It's kind of hard to predict that at this point. Our final question tonight comes to us from JDog55, and shout out to JDog. His GIFs are legendary, and thank you so much for all of the interactions. When the offseason transaction feast is done, who's the unexpected leftover you were certain would have been gobbled up by another team? And I will start with Mr. Scott Plaza.
I think the question marks around Nootbaar is going to just leave him around. I think he's going to either start the season on the injured list, or the Cardinals are going to be too excited to welcome him back to prove his value in a potentially crowded outfield. But hey, going back to the last question, maybe that'll help give some clarity. And then I do think possibly, and I'm not as convinced about this one, but I think Jojo Romero might start the season in St. Louis as well.
Oh, you took mine.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Gabe.
Was this specific to the Cardinals? Because I did not realize that.
Yeah. Cardinals related.
Okay. Who is the unexpected leftover? Okay, let's see. Sorry, I had a different answer prepared. I would say I'll go with Arenado, I guess, because if they're not going to release him, which I don't know, maybe that's posturing. There's a possibility nobody actually tries to trade for him, even if the Cardinals throw in money. You never know. You try to look at other teams and you're like, I feel like I would go with this other option over Arenado, given the complication that arises with getting Arenado. I don't know. It would both surprise me if he's on the roster on opening day, but out of all the options that may or may not get traded, I feel like he's the favorite to just kind of hang around because, well, we don't want to release him, and there is a role in the team for him in theory because he could really have a effective role as a both, if he's willing to do this role, platoon guy who plays against lefties. You play him when Palante starts or McGreevy starts, and then he'd be a defensive sub late in the games. I think he would get a lot of value that way, honestly. But yeah, I guess Arenado's my answer.
See, so I'm going to address the Arenado part first. I think it's interesting that, like, we as Cardinals fans are very down on Arenado because, we've experienced it. We live it, pretty much every day, and we're pretty much done with it. I still think that there's 1 to 1.5 wins in a Nolan Arenado, and I think there is still a small amount of value in that. Obviously, his what he's being paid as opposed to like what his projected value will be going forward do not line up, and so the Cardinals would have to kick in a significant amount of money for any type of value for an acquiring team. But I also think that there will be teams with interest out there just for the sheer sake of plugging in a defensive-minded third baseman who can help your pitching staff. And maybe it's something where Arenado only starts 4 or 5 days a week, and they try to just keep him healthy and fresh throughout the season rather than letting him grind himself into dust every single day like he did in Colorado and now in St. Louis.
I think part of the problem is that it's Nolan Arenado, and you're acquiring Nolan Arenado, and if he's technically slightly below average, I think we'd have an easier time trading him if it was like Gio Urshela or something, like a random guy who was projected the same as Arenado, not even having to do with the money, honestly. Because when you have a potential Hall of Fame career, there's sort of an expectation he's going to play a lot, and it'd almost be better if the Cardinals tried to trade a guy who was used to being a super sub. Honestly, that would be more my complications that make me like, I wonder. And then, of course, that Arenado wants to go to a winning team, and I don't know that winning teams have room for Arenado, especially as a full-time player.
See, I think there are teams that have young pitching staffs that would value a defensive third baseman playing on that team. And if it is from Arenado's perspective, if he's willing to expand his list of teams, he also needs to be willing to expand, his opinion of his usage and, be more willing to, play a little more of a part-time role. And the only person he has to blame for that is himself, right? And his performance. And if he doesn't like that. And so it's like, if you don't, what does Brad Thompson always say? If you don't like it, play better, right? And so that goes for even a future Hall of Fame third baseman who is probably experiencing, age-related decline. I still think that for Arenado's sake, he needs to be open-minded to not only the destination, but also the usage and the playing time as well. I hope and I believe he is looking at it as, I have to earn my shot at playing every day again because of what I've done in the past couple seasons.
I agree with you. I don't know where Arenado's head's at. I'm stuck on the fact that he was shocked that the Cardinals traded guys at the deadline last year. I'm like, where have you been, man? I don't know if he's just like I don't know if his head's in the place where he's going to play a lot less, or if to go on you never know. Hopefully he is, and then the Cardinals will have an easier time trading him than it seems from me. But yeah, I'm just curious where Arenado's head's at, because he just seemed completely caught off guard when the Cardinals traded at the deadline. I'm like, really?
Well, because I think that the way that the players in the clubhouse view it is like they're always looking towards trying to push for something, and so whenever you get the reality, so much so that it's almost maybe a little bit. Unrealistic or whatever. It's like if the rest of the world doesn't believe in you, you have to believe in yourself, kind of thing. And so it's like they rally around the shock the world mentality, and then whenever it's all taken away from you, it's kind of like, hey, what the hell, man, we were trying here. And like, I get it. It's like not a great justification to not sell off pieces, but I can also see where it's like, if you're head down and you're just like focused on trying to win every single day. And like, I get that we all kind of roll our eyes whenever players say things like, I don't pay attention to outside noise. I don't listen to what other people say. I don't really pay attention to standings. I don't pay attention to my stats. I just try to go out and do the best I can every single day. Hey man, if you really do, that's awesome. But also understand that things are going to happen that are outside of your control if you're just not paying attention to like those circumstances as well.
Yeah, I thought those comments were interesting as well. And then he went on the IL right after that, and I thought that was oh boy, we just saw the end of the Arenado time in St. Louis. But I mean, credit to him for coming back. But yeah, I think that hearing his surprise at that was, for lack of a better term, surprising to me as well, especially when Helsley's like, yeah, I get it, but I'm happy to come back the next year. But yeah, I think he's willing to. I think he said he's willing to expand his destinations, but whether he's willing to expand his role into that role you're explaining, Jake, is going to be kind of that hang up, I'm sure for many teams.
His surprise was surprising. Well done, Scott Plaza. That's why they pay you the big bucks. That's why they pay you the big bucks. That's it.
That's why I teach business and not public speaking.
All right. For me, my opinion was Jojo Romero. Relievers always get paid, like overpaid for at the deadline. I kind of was like, maybe the Cardinals will carry him into next season, and there's kind of a lot of smoke around his name starting to come out. And would I be totally shocked to see him moved in the offseason? No. But I also could see an easy world where they carry him into season and then try to trade him at the deadline. After making him the everyday closer, and he kind of builds himself, bulks up his value that way. That's the word I was looking for. That will do it for this episode. Again, thank you all for your responses we received and the continued growing support for the show. We will talk to you guys again next week. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great day. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Viva Alberto's podcast. Please leave a rate and review on your favorite platform and turn on those bell notifications so you can be notified the moment our newest episode is released. As always, make sure to give us a follow on X, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Facebook. Just type in Viva Alberto's on any platform to find us. Have a great day and thanks for listening.